My last question, was it worth it? Ryan, can you walk us through how you got into running an agency, how you basically
Mhm.
got started?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll just give you a quick background on myself. So I come from an engineering background, moved to product pretty early on in my career, played various product roles throughout the years, helping grow products to millions of users. And yeah, now I run a product consultancy where we help companies with product strategy, design, and development.
So like what triggered that? How would you go
Mhm.
from taking products with to millions of users into running your own agency?
Yeah, sure. I had worked at on both sides of the agency world, worked at companies that outsource work to agencies, and I've also worked at agencies. And what I've seen is a lot of times projects they're agreed on a specific budget, and then at some point throughout the project, maybe halfway through, they realize the budget has to increase, and there's really no way to back out of it because they're so far in the process, and then they're expected to pay more money. And just seeing that a lot, I thought it was normal in the industry, and surprisingly, it happens more than you think. And I just kept seeing this over and over again. And then over the years, working in product and being interested in startup, I was always helping people in my network with their startups and products. And then I realized I could actually turn into a business.
What triggered that? And can you give us
Mhm.
lines as to when this happened?
Yeah, so I've always been through my career working in different startups. Sort of 6 years ago, I started just helping out people on the side, just giving advice, really not really truly treating it as a business. And then about a couple of years ago, I went all in, being full time, fully running the business.
Okay. Did you ever have a period where you were like building the business as well as working the job?
Yeah, and it was, I wouldn't say fully building it per se, but more so just building my network, getting involved with different companies, helping people on the side, and never really thought truly of it turning into something bigger. And
Yeah.
at some point, just something felt that it was the right opportunity to do it. And then that's when I took it more seriously and went full time.
It's very similar to my story and
Yeah.
honestly, a lot of other people who are just like helpers in the space. We don't really know
Mhm.
what's happening, and then it starts snowballing into something a lot bigger.
Yeah, for sure. It seems really common, actually, the more people I speak to, for sure.
So on that thread, could you talk a little bit more about when did you get your first client? What were you doing for them? And yeah, just how you got them.
My first official client was technically a family member, so I don't really want to consider them as the first net new one. The first true new connection, brand new out of nowhere, came from just going deep into different niche software forums and just seeing if there were any postings for people interested in doing work. Ended up reaching out to them, having some conversation with them here and there, and then realized they had a specific problem that they're trying to solve and that I could potentially help out with it. And it just happened. And so it wasn't surprising per se, but more an awakening where I realized this was possible, creating a brand new relationship with somebody online. There's people out there that have problems that need to be solved. And if you can help them, then it's an actual business model.
What specifically did you do for them?
It was a website. So they were looking to rebrand their website, build a new one. And so what ended up happening was helping them rebrand their company, design a new logo, put that site together for them, and ended up launching it. And they were really happy with the outcome.
And how much of this have you already done already versus you're just like, I have an idea.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think with anything, there are different levels to how experienced you are. And so definitely wasn't entirely new to it. However, I wouldn't say we were some high, like the most high caliber agency that's been doing hundreds of different rebrands for companies and websites. I think that because we were in that growing phase, definitely had experience with it, but focusing on trying to grow our book of business, we definitely priced at a pretty competitive rate. And I think that also helped the situation. But yeah, definitely a lot of learning lessons throughout the process. And I think that some companies are understanding of that. Some clients are understanding of that, especially when the budgets are lower and they're willing to work through the kinks and stuff like that.
When you say we, was it just you or did you immediately have people working for you?
Yeah, so over the years, I've built a network of different freelancers and consultants that do different specialized work. So whether it be designers, developers, things like that. And so as I grew this business, I brought on some of those people to help out with the different projects. I'm not a designer or developer myself. And
Yeah.
so my background's always been in product management and product strategy. And when a client came in, I figured out who the team would be best suited to work on a particular project, and then I assembled a team and helped them with it. And so over the years, built out a network of people that I really trust and work with them fairly often whenever particular clients come in.
So in that same vein, what were like the biggest lessons you took from working as a product person into running an agency?
Yeah, a few different things. One is just working remotely. When COVID hit, everyone was forced to work remotely. And so a lot of that was new for people. And so just trying to figure out how do you write in a very clear and concise way, because a lot of work was done asynchronously over Slack. And so it was important to just make sure that you are communicating very clearly. Your messages aren't extremely long and confusing to read. Visibility is important for companies. So I found that a lot of companies like to send DMs to people for tasks, and especially when it's work related, it's important to put them in a public Slack channel just so there's visibility. And sometimes it is only really for two people that the tasks are working on, but you never know when you need to reference it. And it's just better to have them in Slack channels rather than DMs. Another thing I find that's really important is being really clear on the values of the company that you're building. So as you grow the organization, the people that you bring in, you need to make sure that they really align with the culture, because if you bring in people that work a little differently, they're used to certain ways of just operating, and it might conflict with the way that the team already operates. And so it creates tension. So it's important to build a team that has the same culture. Another thing is just building products. It's important to speak to customers, which it sounds obvious, but when you really dive deep into how some companies and some products operate, they're really not intentional about how they speak to customers. Maybe the sales team speaks to customers, the product team occasionally might, or they'll just get feedback through emails through the sales team. And so then what happens is there's a lot of broken telephone that happens sometimes, or it's just better to have a direct channel from the product team directly to the customers to really understand what their workflow looks like and if there's any opportunities for the product to help them solve their problems. Yeah, so on that note, it is important to read between the lines when you have those conversations too. So sometimes people tell you one thing, but they really mean that they want something else. And so you really need to use a mix of intuition with experience and just try to understand what technologies are available there to solve those problems. And so then that generally is really important too.
So now being a product person, how have you applied those principles into your agency?
Yeah, so a few things. One is building that muscle of intuition. Intuition is difficult to build up, but the way to do that is to do a lot of self-learning and a lot of just doing in general. So that might mean listening to product podcasts or taking some courses, but a lot of product is also not learned directly in these structured courses. Some of it could be just understanding how startups grow and learning how different business models work. A lot of it is just really trying to develop your own lived experiences, and then that ultimately helps you shape your decisions and the intuition that you build for helping build great products ultimately.
What's something in your business that you're currently working on to improve your agency?
To improve my agency, I think the main things are just trying to find people, really talented people. So as we grow, it becomes more and more difficult to try and manage the different team members. So a lot of the team members, they're really specialized in one thing. And so they might be hitting their capacity, for example. And so then it's easy to find people, but it's difficult to find really great people. And that I find is probably the most difficult thing, is just trying to find people that really align with the mission. Because early on, you might tap your direct network, you might know a bunch of people, and so you can all work together. It's easier, you know them, you've known them for years, and you can always reach out to them for things. But then as you grow, you maybe tapped your network and you're now having to source net new people. You might have to put job postings out there. And so then it becomes more of a risk because you don't know them, you don't really have any background with them. And so then you need to try and put yourself in a good position to give you the best chances of being successful, because A lot of times people just put a job on Upwork, for example, and this has happened to me before too. I'm looking for something specific, post it on Upwork. I get a bunch of responses. You don't know if reviews are real or not. And then what happens? You start working with them and you find out too late that they're actually really not doing much. And it's a difficult thing for sure. So recruiting, I would say, is really difficult.
Or you're hiring one person and it turns out to be a 50-person agency.
Yeah, and they share a login or something.
Struggle's real. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I would say trying to speak to them, speak to the people that you're working with, and really just try to ask questions, direct questions about their experience, particularly asking about their specific work. Generally, if they're acting suspicious, then there's a reason. So people always say you just have conversations based on vibe. I think that's really there's actually a lot to it because you can generally sense when something's not right when you have a conversation, but you just need to ask the right questions, I would say.
Well, funny story. I hired someone and their application was under one name. It wasn't his real name. It was his partner's name. And I've been
Okay.
the wrong name for about 3 months. And he told the rest. And
Okay.
then when the project eventually ended, one of my teammates comes up to me and he's just, that's not his real name, right? His real name is something else.
Oh
So
man.
it feels real. And you could really get lost in if you're not careful. What are some of the other steps you're taking to
Mhm.
ensure that you're getting the right people into your team?
I would say that's not necessarily the most important thing. I could talk about some other things that are really I'm really focusing on right now is just building my network. Ultimately, the goal is to grow the business, get more clients. But I find that through trying to go and chase clients through the traditional way of just selling to people, it doesn't really work that well. And so I've been trying to just build my network in a genuine way, meeting you, having conversations together, not necessarily really trying to hard sell you or anything. You're not really hard selling me, but we really just try to see what each other's up to, see if we can help each other, maybe refer to different people that need help. And so that has been challenging in the sense of you only have so much time. So you can only go to so many events, you can only meet so many people, you can only have so many coffees, and trying to find how to build genuine relationships with people that are in the industry or in a similar space, just so you can just uplift each other and really try to help each other grow through referrals or just working on projects together. I think that's probably definitely up there for sure.
And when did you get this realization?
I would say fairly recently. Shout out to Brent for inviting me to the Cool Kids. And so started to just talk to a lot of different agency owners, found that everybody's really looking for more work. I don't think many people are saying, hey, we have too much work. We don't have enough capacity. And so everyone's trying to find new ways to get clients. And for me, I explored running ads. You assume that the best thing to do to find clients is let's put some ads out there. And I didn't actually go too far into doing that, but through just meeting people and partnering with different agencies that are doing similar work and working together on specific client projects, it felt that it was clicking so much more than cold emails. I've done cold emails before, got on calls with people that were willing to take the call, basically said, okay, what do you want? What do you have to offer me? One person, we had a call, I guess it was the founder and someone else on his team. He basically said, what do you want? And then he just dropped after 5 minutes and just left me with his team member. I didn't really know at that point. I'm pretty sure there's no sales. So we just awkwardly stayed on the call and talked about some of the projects that she's working on. But that one was unusual, but I find just these really cold introductions are really difficult to actually go somewhere just because I find that there's so many cold emails that come out. I'm sure your inbox is filled with spam, LinkedIn's filled with spam. And I think people just have their guard up when it comes to net new people that they don't know, or it's not through somebody in their network. It's just difficult to try to get through that barrier. And so I find that trying to build relationships with people, like genuine ones again, where you just genuinely get along with them and try to help each other out. And at some point when you plant enough seeds, it just seems to start to turn into something. It's just a time game. Unfortunately, you just have to put the work in and be patient in a way.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people like go towards that angle in the beginning
Mhm,
because they don't really see they're not really thinking long term. I think if you think about long term, the upfront costs of running like a LinkedIn campaign or an email campaign,
mhm,
it's very small. You don't have to do
mhm,
much. You have to
mhm,
set things up and then you send it out. Not to take anything away from that. It's still a lot of work.
mhm,
When it comes to networking and building these relationships, upfront cost is so much because you could go to 10 events and literally
mhm,
have nothing and then it works out three
mhm.
years later. But
That's
the
true. Yeah.
downside with the cold email is that once you actually get someone on a call, you have to prepare, you have to do all this.
Mhm,
Your
mhm,
conversion rates are a lot lower. But
mhm.
where it actually takes time to like the bulk and like the meat and bones of what you're actually pitching, there's a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely in this B2B space, it is a long sales cycle. I spoke to somebody a couple weeks ago and they told me they were reaching out to somebody for 8 years. So they every quarter they would say, how are things going? They would try to keep up with them and see if there's anything they could help with. Not directly just hard selling them every quarter, but just seeing how what they're up to, what are the challenges they're facing in their business. And then they said something about how at some point they lost their job, switched to another organization, and then he helped him try to get a referral or something like that. And he basically just helped him along the way. And then when they switched roles, they reached out to him for consulting. And he told me he's made about 10 million from the guy for the past 4 years. And so 8 years might seem like a lot, maybe, but it seems that you just have to keep up with people. People, they might need your help, but they might not remember who you are. And so you just have to be top of mind, but also just not spam people. It's spam is also not fun. You have to figure out a way to do it in a place of just genuinely trying to help people. And then at some point they'll realize, okay, this person's a good person. He's not just doing it for himself, trying to force some sort of sale down my throat. And then hopefully they need some sort of help that you can help with.
To quote Alex Ramosi, the long way is the shortcut because the shortcut never gets you to where you need to go. If you could snap your fingers in
Mhm.
3 years, what are
Mhm.
things you're hoping that you've accomplished within your business?
Yeah. So three things I would say. One of them is to just grow the team with a bunch of people that are really like-minded and that they're really aligned on the mission. And so what that means is we all have the same values. We're really bought in. And the team that we have, we really work well together. So I'm sure you know the feeling where someone on your team fills a gap that you might have. And so then you can really lean on them for that. And they know that you have certain strengths. And so they can lean on you for something. You feel like you don't need to force communication. It just works really smoothly. And so I hope for that, working towards that for sure. And then on that note, just being able to grow the organization, to be really picky about what clients we take on. I know in the early years, you just try to take whatever revenue you can get because really it's definitely cutthroat at the same time. So kind of have to say yes to everything. And then, but sometimes it's really not necessarily a good fit, but you still take it on because of the revenue. And so hoping that when we grow, we don't really have to do that. And we really want to make sure that we're picky about who we work with so we can make sure that we really were able to deliver and it's a good experience for everybody. I would say next one is just really working on difficult problems with really exciting companies. That might mean companies that are doing something very non-conventional or trying to better the world and impact people's lives. And so really want to help companies that are really mission driven and I'm trying to make an impact in this world. And the last thing is just trying to find people, the right people. I think over the years, you just start to discover that it's really difficult to find really talented people, really people that are really hardworking, that really want to genuinely make a difference. I find that a lot of people they don't want to be too over invested in one thing. They want to diversify a lot. They want to have a full-time job with three different side hustles with a drop shipping business and something else. And then what happens is it's difficult to just stay focused on one thing and really try to see something through. And just want to find people that are really aligned with the mission so we can really try to make an impact.
Awesome. What surprised you so far? Anything?
Yeah, a few things. One of them is just how supportive everyone is.
Yeah.
At first, when you don't know too many people doing agencies, it is lonely in the sense of a lot of my friends have jobs that aren't really running agencies. And then after being exposed to Brent's group, it just became this eye-opening experience where there's so many agencies out there and there's really potential to do a lot. It's possible. I think the biggest thing for me was I grew up in a modest home and I always thought that getting a good, stable job was always the end goal. And so just learning that wasn't the only way to make money was really eye-opening to me. And I think that was probably the biggest thing where, you get your first sale. It's not a paycheck. It's a number that you had to put out there. You had to negotiate that and win that business. And it feels like you hit the lottery in a sense, but not in the sense of you got lucky. You definitely had influence in it and you had control over a lot of it, but also there's that variable component where you just don't know what's going to happen. And then when it ends up working, you realize it's actually possible. And then you want to see how far you can take this. I would say that's the biggest thing. And getting over that hump of just realizing sometimes the limiting beliefs you have in your mind or just things in your mind. And once you break through those barriers, you can realize that there's a lot of potential out there.
Yeah. 100%. Totally agree with the supportive community side of things. I was also pretty amazed as to how open and caring everybody is. And
Mhm.
then just apart from that, I think a really common trend is you start doing something for free and you're helping people because you're good at it and you're passionate about it. And then you
Mhm.
stumble into one opportunity that, you're like, I can probably charge for this. And then you
Mhm.
do the job and then you go from there.
Odd you say that because that's actually how I learned how to build websites. I was between jobs early. I worked some contract at a school and it was only a year. And then afterwards, I was trying to figure out what to do. And I thought, okay, I want to learn how to make websites. I found a nonprofit that was looking for someone to build a website. And so we had this agreement where I'll try to figure out how to build a website for free to help them get a new website. And yeah, ended up that worked well. Figured out how to do it on WordPress and still friends with him today. Showed out Avi at Not Just Tourist, NJT. And I find that for people that are trying to build something or that are fairly early on in their career, just finding a way to volunteer some places. There are a lot of nonprofits that need help. And so even if you're not too experienced in it, you're trying to find somewhere where you can do something for free, offer some value, but also learn throughout the process, because then that can turn into some skill that you can monetize in the future.
Any other courses, people you should follow, YouTube videos, articles that really helped you?
Mhm. So I listen to a lot of podcasts nowadays. I try to read occasionally, but it's just time consuming with a toddler. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I've recently came across Diary of a CEO, and so I've been really enjoying those conversations. The There's one by these I forget his name, My First Million or something. That's an interesting one that's sponsored by HubSpot. And then discovered that one of those hosts has another one called MoneyWise, where I listened to one recently where the founder of Loom pocketed like 60 million or something. I don't know if you listen to this podcast, but he's basically looking for internships now, trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life. He built a software business and now is interested in building physical products. So he wants to intern somewhere to be a hardware engineer, but he's lost and doesn't really know what to do. And he has 60 million. And so I wouldn't say it's always about product per se, but I like listening to people at different stages of the journey. So people that are early on in their journey, people that have already made it, they've already exited and reflect back on the experience. I just like learning about startups and how people push through challenges. Because thing is, a lot of these podcasts or gurus, they have advice, but the reality is that every business is different, every experience, every person is different. And so because of that, every situation might not be the same. And so you can't always apply frameworks or specific ideas as a black and white thing. So you have to just form your own judgment based off of all these inputs. And so I generally try to just listen to or absorb information from people of different backgrounds and different just ways of life and perspectives, because I think that it's really important not to just get too zoned in on one. Like, there's only I listen to only Gary Vee, and then everything is just Gary Vee and garage sales. It's you have to take pieces from different places and try to form your own just decision making framework.
What's a hot take? What's something that you've read or you've heard or maybe an influencer said and you don't agree with it?
I don't agree with it. Oh, it's a tricky one. I can't think of anything right now, but I might have to cut the podcast and let me think.
Or it's, well, we can come back to it.
Yeah, come on.
What's a hot take that you do agree with?
I recently started coming across some Hormozy stuff because the Diary of a CEO, there was that interview with him. He interviewed him. He tends to throw a lot of information out there, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily a hot take, but more so what I've come to realize is that sometimes just absorbing, listening to this type of motivational content is enough to encourage you to continue pushing through, regardless of what's even in the underlying meaning. So, what I mean by that too is even reading books, you might already know the concepts of what it's trying to tell you. Okay, work hard, do this and that. And you already obviously know them deep down, but reading these things or consuming that sort of content is more of a reminder that you need to do that. And so that in itself is actually a positive thing to encourage you, because sometimes you just need a little reminder or some sort of motivation to keep going. You might not feel like the best a certain day, and then something that you might hear ends up clicking or reminding you to do something, and it might help in the long run. And not really directly a hot take per se, but something I've just observed. And yeah, that was a good answer to your question.
Great answer. Let's take it back to day one. So you just got your big client. What would you say to Ryan?
Like, it sounds cliche too, so, but I do think that a lot of cliches are only cliches because they've been told so many times by people because they're true that they end up becoming cliches, oddly enough. I think for me, one thing is just telling myself not to be so hard on myself. I think it's easy to put a lot of pressure on yourself you compare yourself to peers, people online that are doing so much better than you, and just telling myself don't be so hard on myself, believing that you put in the work and things will pay off. Sometimes you just need to have that sort of reminder, and sometimes something doesn't go your way and then you're down on the situation. And I find that if I were just telling myself just don't be so hard on myself, I think that would be helpful. But at the same time, sometimes the experiences that you live through, whether they're losses or they're like a negative thing, you can definitely learn from them. And so I don't think necessarily changing the past is a good thing. It's more maybe just reminding myself that don't be so hard on yourself. Another would be, so people say be selfish with your time. You have to be picky about where you spend your time. Don't say yes to everything. I think that early on, it is actually a good thing to try to just say yes to a bunch of things, because you never really know what that could turn into. Sometimes just you might not want to volunteer for this place because you don't think that free is worth your time, or you want to be paid a little bit. I think that just time to take on things. And I heard something recently about just try to live your life and make your decisions to give the best story. That was something I heard somewhere too. It kind of just help, like when you come across some sort of opportunity, just try to think to yourself, does it help me do I think it'll help me in the long run? Do I think that it's a good experience for me? Not thinking so short term of, okay, it's going to take me a few hours. I don't want to do this. Sometimes I don't want to go in an event. It's an hour to get downtown for me. Just sometimes you just do it. Even this podcast, my first podcast ever, nervous. And there's so many reasons why, okay, I don't want to do it, or I don't want to be recorded, or I don't know what people are going to think of me. But what I realize is, who knows who even wants to listen to this video. It could be 3 views on this video, and I'm not, well, hopefully not, hopefully it blows up. But I just realized a lot of this is just in my head, and so why not just put it out there? First one, it can't, how bad could it be really? And enjoying this so far. You're a great host, Ellie.
Just to echo your point, I think that advice is not given enough. I think early on, you have to get in reps. You have,
Mhm,
like, if it's even similar to what you want to do, you just have to get in reps because you're going to learn
mhm.
different things. You're going to learn how to refine your offer, how to communicate to clients. There's a lot of intangibles that you're going to learn working on something.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, for sure.
Early on, it's about getting in those reps, getting in that practice, and then just evolving from there. My last question, was it worth it?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely challenging for sure, but with anything that's really worth doing is likely challenging. And so I find that it's extremely difficult, but it's definitely worth it. And I'd rather give this my best shot and see how it turns out rather than not doing anything and seeing not being happy or wondering what if I did that. I'd rather live with that mindset rather than just hate on the people that are actually going after their dreams or just complaining. I used to work in corporate, and every Monday people would say how much they hated that they're sad to be there because it's Monday, and every Friday they're so happy that it was Friday, and the cycle would repeat every week. And I didn't understand how. I just felt that it wasn't really for me. I didn't really want to be in a place where people didn't want to be. And for me now, I genuinely enjoy what I do. I'm working all the time, evenings and weekends, and it doesn't really feel necessarily like work because I probably would be doing this regardless, just like I was doing before, where I have a friend that has a startup and then I want to give my input or bounce ideas off each other. I would probably be doing anyways. And so now it's really just being reliant on this for my income, and my family also relying on me. And so there's definitely more pressure, but I do think that, yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth it. And, but it's not for the faint of heart for sure.